Have you ever considered the distinction between pleasure and happiness? If we cannot differentiate between the two, we might fall into a significant trap in our present and future lives. To explore this, we have emphasized on the 5 questions. First one, how can we define and distinguish between dopamine and serotonin and their roles in the lower and higher brain functions? And second question, how can we identify the specific nature of pleasure and happiness concerning dopamine and serotonin? And question number 3, how can we understand evolutionary theory and its progress from animal nature to human consciousness? And question number 4, how can we differentiate the regulatory systems in Western and Third World countries and their varying impact on individuals, leading to depression or addictions? Finally, how can we overcome depression and addiction to lead a life filled with peace and happiness? To address this first question, we must first emphasize 2 key areas as a dopamine and serotonin. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter that is responsible for the feeling of pleasure. It is released when engaged in activities that provide short-term rewards to our body and primitive or lower brain, such as eating food, having sex, or taking drugs in an excessive way. On the other hand, serotonin is a different neurotransmitter that is involved in a long-term feelings of happiness and overall well-being for both our finite body and a higher brain, which is close to a higher consciousness. When we experience pleasure, dopamine is released in the brain's reward pathway. This pathway includes the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for the decision-making and planning, and the nucleus accumbens. The nucleus accumbens is often associated with the release of dopamine, a neurotransmitter that is involved in feelings of pleasure and reward. Dopamine activates the area of the brain from where this makes us feel good and encouraging us to repeat the behavior that lead to release of dopamine. However, if we consistently pursue pleasure, our brain can become desensitized. For instance, if a person continues to take a drug like heroin with a smaller portion they began, and later their body might become desensitized to its effects over time, requiring higher dose to achieve the same level of pleasure. This can potentially result in addiction, as we start relying on the elevated feelings and deprived from seeking pleasure. Another example, when using unnecessary sexual medication like Viagra, our bodies may begin to demand more of it by time continuation to achieve the desired performance, ultimately causing a loss of natural ability because we are relying on substance. This can lead to addiction and even depression due to the growing dependency on such substance. Excessively releasing dopamine can lead to dysfunction in the prefrontal cortex, potentially resulting in impulsive behavior that resembles the action of a lizard with no consideration for consequence or future outcomes. This lack of foresight intensifies the craving or desiring for immediate rewards, amplifying the effects of dopamine and contributing to neuronal cell damage. The interaction between dopamine and cortisol is a major driver of addiction due to the dysfunction in the prefrontal cortex. In this context, we can also observe individuals who commonly referred to as sociopaths. Those who engage in habitual actions and behaviors, such as individuals like British nurse Lucy Ledbetter. She was sentenced on 21st of August 2023, life in prison for murdering 7 babies and attempting to kill 6 others. However, she didn't emphasize the consequence for herself, and the family lost their babies due to her lack of empathy. This seems to be a result of her dysfunctional prefrontal cortex. This includes not only criminals like killers, but also individuals involved in activities like gambling, taking drugs or alcohols, robbery, theft, bribery, political corruption, and even spending too much money for unnecessary shopping. These people appear to disregard the potential future consequences of their actions, seemingly detached from their eventual outcomes. Their focus remains on seeking immediate pleasure without considering the implications for their own accountability or the impact on other individuals, sorrows, families, and society's well-being. This can lead to significant societal imbalances and problems on a larger scale, both locally and globally. However, negative karma closely accompanies our own reflection, such as masks like standing in front of a mirror and making a screaming face. The mirror, of course, reflects a similar image, what we did. Consequently, individuals often experience feelings of anxiety, frustration, and even depression secretly. They find themselves unable to attain genuine peace and happiness due to their karma of deceiving and exploiting others. While the pursuit of peace and happiness through serotonin is linked to how we contribute not only to our individual well-beings or families, but also to society as a whole or entire world. This connectedness extends to all living human beings and even to all living creatures. So now we're going to emphasize the second questions. How can we identify the specific nature of pleasure and happiness concerning dopamine and serotonin? When dopamine is connected with reward, this is an inherent drive for survival, crucial for motivation and progress to achieve our goals in our competitive environment. This is good for our individuals, society, market, and state level to increase economic growth in West and including developed countries. However, it is distinct from contentment and happiness. Pleasure and reward are linked, while contentment and happiness share a connection to accomplish on our finite arc for infinite journey. 7 key differences underscores this comparison. Pleasure is a short term, such as taking drugs, including excessive eating and shopping. Pleasure is visceral, involving indulgence. Pleasure is taken through bribes or drugs. Pleasure is achieved alone, possibly by exploiting others. Pleasure is achievable through substances, using alcohol instead of drugs. Pleasure is associated with extremes and dependency, requiring a larger portion or higher potency for increased pleasure. Here, dependency means a slave while substance as a master. So, master versus slave relation between substance and ourselves. Pleasure is tied to dopamine. In contrast, happiness is characterized by the following attributes. Long-term nature. Happiness is achieved through action, such as planting a good throw into our hard brain and its action through our sixth sense, even with good words and a smiling face to others, as a maintaining harmony among living beings or contributing knowledge to society. Happiness as a eternal quality. It is related to spiritual and religious actions, carrying a deeper significance beyond the material realm, while avoiding excessive lust, anger, greed, envy, and ego either into our inner world or outer world. Happiness gifted and shared. Happiness is given through act of generosity such as donation and helping hands extended to others. Happiness as a social achievement and collectivist. It is often realized in the context of social groups where spending quality time with family, friends, and relatives foster feelings of happiness, including given time with our surrounding nature as a close kin. Sometimes close kin we can understand inner and out. We can see that internally our cells, tissues, and organs collectively form the body, striving for happiness. While externally families, societies, countries, the world, solar system, galaxies, and universes are created in a collective effort, enhancing ultimate happiness and peace under God's universe. Happiness as an independence from substances. Unlike pleasure, happiness is not tied to substances. It arises from genuine feeling of contentment rather than relying on excessive materialistic pursuit. Happiness as a moderation and balancing life. Happiness doesn't rely on extreme pleasure or measures. It does not demand the continuous pursuit of heightened experiences, but rather emphasizes inner peace and contentment, as if through a balanced approach encompassing the body, mind, and spirituality. Balance is not only a beauty for human being but also for the entire universe. The experience of happiness is associated with the neurotransmitter as a serotonin, contributing to overall well-being and positive emotional states. So now we are going to emphasize question number 3. How can we understand evolutionary theory and its progression from animal nature to human consciousness? According to Darwin theories, human bodies have evolved from earlier animals' form. If we trace back our evolutionary history, we can observe that all living creatures originated from single-cell organisms, from which our body have gradually formed. Dopamine is closely linked to our body's needs and desires, while serotonin is associated with our sense of spiritual well-being, connecting with our being of infinite force. When our body signals its necessities for survival mechanisms, these demands are not inappropriate. They are essential for our continuation in this finite world. The single-cell organism was destined to embrace its collective nature, forming a human body throughout its several 100 million years journey. In our evolutionary journey, even our closest ancestor, the monkey, exhibited remarkable intelligence and decision-making abilities compared to many other animals. However, as they became more self-centered and greedy, they encountered challenges as well. An illustrative example of this behavior involves encounters with cunning humans. Some immoral individuals devised traps to catch these monkeys. They ingeniously crafted traps using coconut shells, drilling holes large enough to fit a hand but not a closed fist. Inside the shells, they placed tempting nuts, positioning them in a way that monkey could access. The monkey, driven by their greed, attempted to grab as many nuts as possible. Their desire to collect these nuts leads them to cleanse their fist tightly. Consequently, they found themselves unable to pull their hand out of the coconut shells, becoming trapped. Interestingly, If they simply let go of a knot, they could easily retrieve their hand. However, their overpowering greed prevented them from making their rational decision, and they cannot understand what is happening. This prevents, because of their dysfunctional prefrontal cortex, from making wise decisions regarding future consequences, ultimately leading them to be caught by human predators. Now, we can emphasize on question 4. How we can differentiate the regulatory system in Western and Third World countries and their varying impact on individuals, leading to depression or addictions. However, similar problems arise when the human body becomes excessively self-centered without valid reasons, relying excessively on substances. In this self-centered state, individuals often forget their collective nature, becoming detached from other existing beings and attempting to exploit others. So, avoiding this, it is crucial to establish rules. Similarly, to how laws protect property and maintain safety for individuals within the developed countries, in some cases more compared to the Third World countries. In this context, the brain can function as a central regulator while the body acts as a common entity. For example, in the absence of proper regulations, a state like many third world countries easily transformed into a fertile environment for chaos and destruction. We can learn from our past history about how rulers acted and how common people suffered in absence of regulation. For example, in the Encomienda and Meta system in the Caribbean and Peru, which existed from the early 16th century to 18th century, there were no laws to prevent uncivilized behavior such as killing of native inhabitants, the treatment of women as a mere object of recreation, and the use of humans as slaves. This behavior was often carried out by Spanish colonists and their descendants. Currently, in countries like Burundi, Congo, and Venezuela, individuals are perceived to be involved in corruption, bribery, and other immoral actions due to weak institutions and regulations. This has led to a culture of impunity, where criminals view others as a potential source of money, and those in position of power exploit common citizens for their own gain. According to NIMBYO Crime Index, the following are the most crime-ridden countries in the world in 2022 and 2023, such as Venezuela, Papua New Guinea, and South Africa. On the other hand, many Western countries have operative institutional force and functional regulatory bodies, competitive market economy. But there has been a growing concern about increasing depression. For instance, in the United States, an estimated 14.5% of teenagers and 16.5% of adults are depressed, while the depression rate of single-parent teenagers in the United States is 20.9%. The problem arises from excessive focus on individualism and materialism, leading us to prioritize short-term pleasure and self-centeredness. The pursuit of excessive liberties and empowerment influenced by lower brain perceptions disrupt the fundamental nature of collective bonds, such as family ties, promoting excessive individualism and self-centered attitudes. This societal shift has resulted in an increased divorce rate in Western contexts and including many developing countries as well. According to the US Census Bureau, 43.1% of the population in the United States is not married and living as a singles, while in the UK the figure stands at 41.2%. As a result, both parts of the world have been experiencing difficulty in different ways. ranging from corruption and depression to excessive addiction to materialistic substances. This is very closely related to our animal nature. According to the journal Animal Cognition, rats, mice and dogs are used for the research, while some people are appointed to provide meals to those animals. These animals sees human only as a source of food. They don't perceive the complete picture of the human body, but mainly the image of the food. Similarly, many spouses or partners perceive the opposite gender merely as a source of pleasure, lacking recognition of their spiritual or collective nature of relationship. In contrast, corrupted individuals in various professions such as business, law, including police and lawyers, and politics often view common people as a means to financial gain. This greed blinds them, veiling their higher level of reasoning and consciousness. Such behavior exemplifies the negative impact of people prioritizing self-interest over genuine human connection and ethical values. Such as Ferdinand Marcos, the former president of the Philippines, and his wife Imelda Marcos were accused of widespread corruption during his regime, which lasted from 1965 to 1986. They were accused of embezzling billions of dollars from the country. They cannot think about the future due to their dysfunctional prefrontal cortex. As a result, we cannot observe many differences between the group of people who are addicted to short-term pleasure because of significant rate of neurons, resulting in their dysfunctional prefrontal cortex. Some individuals, such as celebrities as Lovato, Lady Gaga, Selena Gomez, and Kanye West, may have access to materialistic advantage and pleasure, but they still experience depression or lack of happiness and peace in their life, potentially due to imbalances in certain levels. Finally, we are going to emphasize on question 5. How can we overcome depression and addiction to lead a life filled with peace and happiness? So those who are already influenced by serotonin are fortunate in both this world and the next world. This is due to their regulated and requisite knowledge. Our God never creates His creation without cures. He exists in a more than 11 dimensions, enabling Him to know the past, present, and future of human existence. Let's consider the example of our sun. God created it with a delicate balance. The sun continuously undergoes atomic and nuclear explosions, possessing the potential to exert a significant force capable of eradicating our Earth. The sun's core gravitational power serves as a regulating force, preventing it from venturing further into other planets within our solar system. There are two crucial areas we must consider for balancing our life force. First, setting goals in an appropriate manner to achieve our dream. And second, nourishing our spiritual or religious mindset. To maintain equilibrium, we need to motivate ourselves and work towards our objectives while prioritizing our health through proper nutrition. It is important to avoid resorting to extreme measures or exploiting others in our pursuit of goals. Achieving these requires the regulation of our dopamine responses to activities like exercise, maintaining a balanced diet, and avoiding prohibited actions or substances such as alcohol and drugs. The encouraging aspect is that neurons, under the regulation of serotonin, can be enhanced through vital actions such as prayer, cultivating a positive relationship, embracing fasting to awaken our spiritual mindset, and contributing to the well-being of all living beings. This is the reason why donation is one of the key pillars of many religions or our spirituality, to seek eternal happiness rather than momentary pleasures. Spirituality or religious disciplines and beliefs helps us regulate our body and mind. Emphasize on fasting and on extending kindness and compassion. This provides us with a profound understanding of how to control our body and mind, preventing us from being trapped by the pleasure of addiction, and teaching us lessons in regulating our mind and inner demon. Religions not only intervene in our body and mind based on our required knowledge, but also establishes harmony among body, mind, and spiritual being. Based on the journal psychiatric research, those who maintain the mentioned balanced life can extend their life expectancy by around 10 years and experience less visible sign of aging on their body. The people of Himalayas, the Okinawas of Java, the Hunja people of Pakistan, and the Abkhazians of the Caucasus in Russia are living longer with happiness and peace because of their healthy, simple, and spiritual lifestyles. Even people like Nathan, an influential Vietnamese Buddhist monk, although he passed away at the age of 95, but before the time, he was a healthy and active person at that age. The action of kindness also facilitates getting closer to our Creator. When we are close to our Lord and His creation in this universe, a drop of water merges with the ocean of water and becoming a greater being. Ultimate content, accomplishment, fulfillment is found in these states. Then how can addiction or depression dare to knock on the door when the regulation of serotonin enables greater happiness and self-actualization in the finite world, while also being assured for the future world? Thank you very much. I wish you all the best. Thank you. Bye.